Front page of the Daily Mail today. Very good morning to you. Church in crisis as Welby is forced to quit. Let's talk to Caroline Farrow, commentator, and it says here Catholic journalist. Caroline, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
So, it all happened rather rapidly yesterday, didn't it? I mean, I was suggesting this time yesterday that he would probably have to resign sometime between now and Christmas, but it turns out he didn't last out the day. It's about 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Suddenly, Archbishop Justin Welby stood down. And a man who has tried to be sort of a fairly significant figure, if you might say so, politically over the years, has suddenly found himself in a bit of trouble.
Yes, absolutely. And ironically, I was at Lambeth Palace yesterday myself, not related to this particular incident. Right. But there's been a disgraceful case of a Church of England chaplain at a school, Bernard Randall. Bernard gave a very gentle homily to pupils saying you should not be forced to accept any ideology. And he was saying that in response to the fact that a very progressive group, Educate and Celebrate, had been inside that school's classroom and encouraging children to smash heteronormativity. So Pastor Bernard gave a very gentle homily about how they shouldn't be forced to accept any ideology if they didn't want to. And the Archbishop of Canterbury, it wasn't Justin Welby directly, but Bernard got sacked from his job as a chaplain. He then got referred to anti-terrorism authorities. His whole life was destroyed. And even though he was cleared by everybody, the Church of England still hasn't given him his job back. Right. They still haven't reinstated him.
But isn't this indicative of where the church has kind of got a bit lost and found themselves in the middle of weeds which they shouldn't really be involved in? You know, the Church of England is a church, right? It should just be a church. It should just do churchy things, shouldn't it? What the hell's it doing, getting involved in this kind of nonsense?
Well, what was ironic about it was that they weaponised safeguarding. Right. So there they were telling a pastor who had simply told children not to have any ideology accepted on them, that he was a safeguarding risk. And yet, ironically, it turns out all along, Justin Welby knew that someone, very close, well, I won't say very close, but, an acquaintance of his, someone that he'd had personal dealings with, was engaged in the most horrific form of abuse and had, severely damaged, harmed, abused over 130 boys and just sort of turned a blind eye to it. And what I can't get over, and I think this is the crux of the matter, was we know that Justin Welby knew about this. We knew that, from 1984, this was known about. And yet he completely obfuscated, he covered it up. He said in 2013 that it had been reported to the police, it hadn't. And I'm thinking, did he think that because this guy was now in South Africa, that he just thought, out of sight, out of mind? Whereas as a parent, as anybody with human decency, you know that there is an abuser really out there at large, causing damage, harming people. You would want to do whatever you could to make sure that they were out of harm's way. And yet he obfuscated. I think what's really distressing about this as well, so many things are distressing about it, but when his resignation came through yesterday, he said, it has become clear to me that I must take personal responsibility. So there was an edge of resentment, I'm being pushed rather than falling on my sword. And so that indicates that the Church of England still doesn't understand how seriously this must be taken. The thing.
I mean, the thing is, in the papers this morning, we're hearing from various different victims, and there are many of them, saying there are not just, one person to blame here. It's not just Archbishop Welby. It's also all about some other members of the clergy who might have even been involved in even more of the cover-up. And let's face it, we've got a piece in the Mail today about this guy, John Smythe, who was apparently in receipt of donations from Archbishop Welby, who was quite happy to support his mission. He sent him Christmas cards. This was not somebody that he didn't sort of know very well. This was clearly somebody that he knew and admired.
Yes, and Welby had been at these controversial summer camps where this abuse had taken place. And then there's been some terrible contradictions in what he said, because he said, between 1979 and 1983, I think I had nothing to do with him. But it turns out that in 1980, Welby was at one of these camps himself.
Right.
And you wonder, I do wonder whether or not there is a sort of class element here, because this John Smythe preyed on all the very posh schoolboys, you know, Eton, Winchester, Harrow. These camps were for future leaders of the Church of England. And you wonder, was it a boys' club going on? Did they actually not realise how very, harmful this was, how this was leaving people with physical and emotional scars? I mean, this was just abuse of the absolute worst kind. And actually, when something like that's going on, and I don't want to detail the abuse in I don't want to sort of dwell on it, but boys were basically being sadistically beaten and thrashed.
Right.
So clearly you have this individual with a very deep-seated disorder,
Yeah, there's obviously something wrong with him.
Yeah. So instead of, maybe there was some sort of misplaced compassion, thinking, I must forgive. And there's this is a problem, I say a problem, but, Christianity teaches redemption, teaches forgiveness, but that doesn't actually rule out making sure people are safe and also justice. These are sins, to be very theological for a moment, these are sins that cry out to high heaven for vengeance.
No, exactly right. I mean, according to the Making Review, which is, by the way, the only reason we know about all of this is because there was a review published, a few weeks ago, which implicated Justin Welby as someone who may have sort of enabled it to happen, for want of a better phrase. But they concluded that he showed, in their words, a distinct lack of curiosity after learning about the abuse that Smythe had handed out, and kind of drew a line under it as if to say, well, let's not go there.
I know, and it's almost like normalising it. As if it was some little peccadillo, some slightly embarrassing, eccentric habit that he had. You just think, what is the mindset? Because for ordinary people, this is absolutely abhorrent. This isn't something that should be normalised or minimalised. And so this is why I wonder, was it some kind of bizarre public school mindset?
Yes.
And I say that not wanting to attack public schools, but you're just trying to, well, maybe we shouldn't get inside the head of what was going on, inside Welby's head. Right. Maybe I'm just trying to exercise
there's clearly more too. I think you're right. I think your instinct is correct. Caroline, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. We've got to run. Caroline Farrow, Catholic journalist and commentator.